We are turning to the Euros. Things are heating up. Obviously, we had a big win for the Danes last night against Wales. Italy coming through in extra time against Austria. This evening, we have Belgium against Portugal, which I think is the biggest match of the tournament thus far, we can say. And 5 o'clock, the Dutch against the Czech Republic. Very happy to say we have Mark Lawrenson on the line. Hi, Mark.
How are we doing?
Very well. Also great to have David Winner with us, amongst other things, author of Brilliant Orange, the neurotic genius of Dutch football. Hi, David.
Hi.
Great to have you with us. Mark, did you read Rod Liddle today?
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, he wants you back. He wants you back. He went through everybody on TV. He said, look, Jermaine Genius, he's not bad, I suppose. However, I would prefer the morose and perpetually depressed musings of Mark Lawrenson. Wouldn't we all, Laro?
Well, it'd be nice, but hey, I've had my day, so it's all good. It's always nice to get a little bit of a mention, which is great. But I don't think he'd be everybody's favourite writer either, would he? Rod Liddle, to be honest with you. But I've always read him. Never ever met him. But he's a massive Millwall fan, isn't it? I'm not really sure what it says about me.
Well, let's.
If there's a petition, I'll sign it.
Bring back Laro. It starts here. 2 signatures already, and I presume you signed it too, Laro, so we're up to 3.
Maybe.
So, David Winner, author of Brilliant Orange, as I said, the neurotic genius of Dutch football. They're about to get underway in just under an hour's time against Czech Republic. Give us an insight into the 2021 iteration of their neuroticism. What's going on in this Dutch football camp?
It's all absolutely harmonious as far as we can tell, which is... It kind of fits with recent tournaments, not that they've been in many, but the real heyday of Dutch civil war and strife is back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. One of the best actually was when they played the Czechs in the semi-final of Euros 76, where they disintegrated almost completely, and they played that semi-final, had 2 players sent off, and collapsed. But they're not in that kind of state at the moment, and they're playing increasingly well. People in Holland are beginning to feel a little bit optimistic.
I was reading a piece today, Jonathan Northcroft, talking about how Frankie de Jong has really blossomed and is playing brilliantly. Give us an insight into this guy, David, because he went to Barcelona and it's been a tricky time. He's had 3 coaches in the space of 2 seasons. He's played right in midfield. He's played anchor in midfield. He's played as a number 10. He's played in the centre of defence. I think towards the end of the season he put in a brilliant performance in the Copa del Rey final against Athletic Bilbao, and that was Barcelona's first trophy in nearly 2 years. And he arrived at the Euros having played more football than any other footballer across the 2020-21 season. And Jonathan Northcroft was making the point that he's very much the post-crisis Dutch footballer. He belongs very firmly in that mould after missing out on the previous tournament. So de Jong, is he living up to his billing?
Yes, I mean he's heading into the same kind of territory where he can be compared with Pogba. He's not quite as good as Pogba, probably. Doesn't score quite as many goals. Doesn't score very often, actually. But he's a linchpin of that new Barca that Koeman trusts him and likes him very much. He was probably the best player in that wonderful Ajax team from 2 years ago who very nearly reached the Champions League final before they fell apart in the last 20 minutes against Spurs. And he's a wonderful sort of the latest version of the perfect Ajax-educated total footballer. He's steeped in movement and positional play. He can read the game beautifully. He has an unusual and very effective dribbling style, and he is the future of Dutch football, probably of Barcelona football as well. And he's 23 now, I think.
Yeah.
But he had a very difficult first year at Barcelona, but then the whole club was sort of lurching from crisis to crisis. And he's done much better this year, and he's improving all the time. He's seriously capable as well.
And David, one other one before I bring in Mark Lawrenson for his thoughts on the Dutch. Frank de Boer, the manager. So he was briefly in the Premier League at Crystal Palace. It seems his direct approach, to put a euphemism on it, was a bit problematic. Tell us about De Boer as a character and why it isn't working with the Dutch national team at the moment. I guess it is thus far.
Well, it is now working. He grew up sort of really in the relatively cosseted world where he was always very much appreciated of Dutch football, and then he went to join Van Gaal at Barcelona late in his playing career. But he was one of the he and his brother were key members of the great Dutch team of the mid and late 90s. And he was installed as Ajax coach, and he won the league for them 4 years in a row. But the first couple of years, especially with Christian Eriksen, with Siem de Jong, it was pretty good. By the final year, it had become very stale. Lots of tedious, endless ball circulation, possession, sideways passing, not moving very forward, and it had got his reputation was higher than it probably should have been.
Okay.
And he got the jobs at Inter and then Crystal Palace, kind of on the basis of having been a great player and having won all these titles at Ajax. And in each case, they were a disaster. Perhaps even more of a disaster at Crystal Palace. I don't think they scored a single goal under him, did they? 5 games or 6 games or something?
Yeah, pretty good.
He was very... I don't know. I mean, I've spoken to him, but I can't claim to know him. He was very chastened, I hear, by that experience. And he's a lot more flexible. And this time round, he's rather bravely, and in the teeth of quite a lot of opposition from old Cruyffians, he's adopted 3-5-2, which wasn't popular. And there's this kind of theological argument in Dutch football that goes back at least a decade about, you should always play 4-3-3, said Cruyff in his original statement of it. And Cruyff's followers, including Ronald de Boer, said, if Cruyff knew about this change from 4-3-3 to 3-5-2, he would be turning in his grave. So he's ditched that for the moment, and he's adopted this much more practical and highly effective and increasingly effective 3-5-2. So they haven't played a really good team yet, so it could all disintegrate. But he's doing pretty well, and his stock has risen in Holland as a result.
Mark, they're on the right side of the draw, that's for sure. Suddenly they'll be eyeing up a semi-final place after missing out in Euro 16 and no Russia in 2018. 3-2 win, first day out against Ukraine. People said defensively that didn't look great, but it was a 3-2 win. They beat Austria 2-0. Maybe that's a better looking result now after the Austrians last night against Italy than we thought. And then 3-0 against North Macedonia. So what have you made of them thus far?
I think you would probably describe them as workmanlike. They've obviously got goals, which is great for any team in this particular competition, which is good. But as you rightly say, I mean, it wasn't the most difficult group. And I think when you're a manager, and I think one of the biggest things is you look at your players and you say to yourself, well, what's the best way we're going to go and get results? And I get the old Cruyff thing and everything because, he was absolutely sensational, and not just as a player but also as a manager. But sometimes your hands are tied, and you look at these players and say, right, what can we do? And he's done extremely well so far. I would have thought they would probably go on to win today, but you never know, because obviously knockout football is completely different, and you only need to go a goal down and all of a sudden everything changes. But they've started to look a team, which is the most important thing. But that's the thing with these competitions is you get a good start and you start to build, and that's exactly what they've done. This will be their most difficult game, obviously, because it becomes knockout football, and you can get beat by penalties.
David, Cruyff's influence is just kind of fascinating from the outside, this unbelievable figure in Dutch football and beyond. So, 2 things to put to you. From memory, I was at the World Cup of 2014. Van Gaal was absolutely ditching 4-3-3 and playing 3 at the back. I don't remember, maybe there was an outcry then. And also, were the Dutch playing free-flowing total football at Euro 88?
At Euro 88, it wasn't free-flowing and total at all. It was 4-4-2. because Van Basten was so extraordinary and Gullit was extraordinary, and they had Koeman and Rijkaard and Arnold Muren had a lovely tournament. People remember it as more beautiful football than it was, but actually 74, 78, 98 were all much more total. Sorry, what's the question again?
Well, I'm just saying it doesn't seem like they're that wedded to it. Like if De Boer is having to handle criticism, it seems like at various other points Cruyff would have been turning in his grave or shaking his head when he was still alive, it seems.
Well, there's lots of within the sort of general framework of whether you call it Cruyffian football or total football or Dutch school or Ajax school or even Van Gaal, because he's heavily woven into all of this. So he follows Rinus Michels rather than Cruyff. Cruyff and he hated each other. It's all variations on the same thing, which is the clever and very technically precise creative use of space. You deny space to the other team, that's pressing, and you create it for yourself, which is, the movement and the passing and the third and fourth man running, fifth sometimes, that's all to do with creating space. And that's the essence of all of this stuff. Cruyff was the one who was the most important in developing it and making a kind of quasi-religion of it, even. Because at Barcelona, you have exactly the same kind of arguments. And one of the other things that's been very striking this tournament is seeing how many international teams, because Champions League top club teams have been doing it for a while, how many international teams have adopted this same kind of combination of quick, close passing, movement, positional play, and pressing, even the Italians. So, some years ago, the Germans adopted it. The Spanish obviously adopted it to win in 2010. And now most of not the French, I don't think, but most of the rest of the top teams, Belgium certainly, they're all doing it, but in different, with different flavors and different emphases.
Yeah, so variations on a theme. That's the 5 o'clock game, Netherlands, Czech Republic. Denmark, we have the number one team in the world, Belgium, against the defending champions, Portugal. So this whets the appetite. How do you see it? What have you made of them both so far?
Well, let's take Belgium. I mean, undoubtedly the strengths are from midfield going forward. Defensively, they look like they're always going to concede goals, which of course they have generally. And Portugal it's been a little bit of a strange one insofar as the result against the Germans, obviously, where the Germans just basically sliced them open in the end. But the thing with Portugal, they've got good players in every area of the team, and of course they've got your man. And whatever you think about Ronaldo now, and obviously his abilities are starting to wane a little bit. You give him chances, and he'll score goals, and he's got players in that team who will make chances for him. I think this will be the best game of the competition so far. Or shall I say, I'm looking forward to it more than any other game that I've seen. And just going back to the Holland thing, can I say that the best goal I have ever seen in my life was Van Basten. Was that in the Euros, I think, where he scored from an unbelievable...
The 88 final, the crazy dipping volley.
Well, yeah, when was that?
The final of 88.
The Soviet Union in 88.
I haven't seen a better goal than that. That was just sensational. When you think the amount of space he had in which to put the ball was just really was remarkable. But going back to these two, I'm hoping it'll be open. I think obviously the Portuguese will sit in a little bit. They're going to have to deal with Lukaku, who's done extremely well so far. Looks a completely different player, obviously, with what he's done in Italy as well. And he's such a handfield, and he's a beast of a man as well. And but it'll be good that. But you don't really know with Portugal sometimes. You look at them, you think, they should actually be a very, very good team. And I find with them sometimes they kind of go into the shell a little bit. And I think Belgium under the manager just want to come out and they want to play. And if you're going to play against him, you've got to stop De Bruyne. You really seriously have, because he sees things in games which mere mortal footballers will never ever see. And he really is the brains of their team.
We have Ronaldo at 36, who, by the way, is covering 3 kilometres more per game than the average striker in the competition. So we've Ronaldo at 36 against Vertonghen and Alderweireld. So it's a real clash of the 30s there. Bruno Fernandes, one I wanted to ask you about, Mark. So he was on the bench against France on Wednesday. Santos, their coach, has said the time for pretty football's over. So I think they're withdrawing further into their shell. They went with the midfield three of Moutinho, Danilo and Renato Sanchez came into the side, and they left Ronaldo with Bernardo Silva and Jota alongside him. So do you suspect that's the approach this evening? Like, it seems kind of almost inconceivable, Bruno Fernandes out of the side, but he hasn't really done much this tournament thus far.
No, he hasn't. And I just wonder whether, obviously, the rigours of the Premier League have caught up with him a little bit. He's been outstanding at Manchester United, as everybody knows. But listen, this coach, he's been round the block a few times, and he will have seen Fernandes in training. He will have measured him as well in terms of, you're talking about Ronaldo running and all those kind of things. They will have done all that as well, the Portuguese, like every other team. And the manager probably just thinks, you know what, he's a little bit off it. So he may just be one who will bring on if they're chasing the game. But I don't see them going for the Belgians, which is the problem with that would be you'd really want to go for the Belgians, wouldn't you? Because as we know, defensively they're all over the place. I mean, the first game, the kind of back three at the time, they were like statues, the three of them. So I'm just looking forward to the game. I think it will be very, very interesting. I'm just hoping that it's not tight, but I think that's what Portugal will want.
I think so.
As I say, this fella, their manager, he's managing an awful lot of games, and he will have a very distinct plan here in which he thinks he can beat Belgium.
How do you see it, David?
I'm just struck something that Mark said about Fernandes. At United he's the main man, and yet the Portugal manager has him on the bench, whereas Pogba, who's sort of slightly in service of Fernandes at United, you see how gloriously he plays for France. It's just that has to do with Manchester United and Solskjaer rather than the tournament, but it's just a sort of intriguing thing. I can see Portugal winning that somehow on the break,
grinding it out.
Yeah, grinding it out like they did to France in the final, whenever it was, 5 years ago.
Mark, the Italians yesterday, 2-1 winners against Austria. Did they go up or down in your estimation on the basis of yesterday? It was a more quintessential Italian performance in certain respects, as opposed to the freewheeling way they made it through the group stages. Yeah,
I think they've obviously been better in the early rounds. But as I say, it's this thing where you have to kind of forget. You have to kind of forget the league basis, and as I say, it is completely different. But I think when you look at all these competitions, the Euros and the World Cups, that there is a time for any team that could possibly win it where they have kind of an iffy day, for want of a better description. And Italy were a bit like that. But I think the most encouraging thing, of course, is they've got through. And that's all that you can do. And, I've loved watching because they've just been so completely different. And as David was saying about teams pressing, the manager the manager sets his team up as though he wants to play in it, and he would have loved to have played in it because it's very much, front foot going forward, etc. But they're through, and nobody will want to play against them, that's for sure.
No, I wouldn't think so. There was that great moment, David, where Vialli, who's been very ill, and you hope he makes a full recovery, runs down and hugs Mancini, and people on Twitter had grabbed a photo of an almost eerily similar body language celebration from their Sampdoria days years and years ago, and you kind of thought, God, it's all the lovely stuff of football there in that moment. Something very likeable about this Italian team, I'd put it to you.
Yeah, they're gorgeous, and they've adopted modern football. There's a big argument, I gather, in Italy, has been for a while, about whether they should stay loyal to their old creed. The Catenaccio. It wasn't always full on Catenaccio, but defensively, you play very cautiously and you grab a goal and you defend the one goal lead. And voices in Italy saying, no, we've got to be European as if they're not part of Europe. We've got to embrace football with an F, not C for calcio. So it's a big cultural shift that's taking place in Italy, and remarkable, really, where they were 3 years ago, not qualifying for the World Cup, and Mancini has come in and done a remarkable job. And when they beat Holland in Amsterdam late last year, and the Dutch were amazed that they'd been outdone in their own style by the Italians, who used to be the exact polar opposite of them. So they embraced the new religion. And of course, Chiesa is Italian for church. Came on yesterday and scored a very religious kind of goal. Beautiful goal.
Much like his father. I'm not even, the 3 touches for Chiesa, Mark, were out of this world.
Yeah. Brilliant. It's just, as I said before, they've just been a real breath of fresh air, I think. And I think the quality of the goals has been excellent. But I mean, and you mentioned to us before about, I'm presuming that obviously the work rate of Ronaldo for any other striker has been outstanding. I'd love to know the work rate for the whole of this team with Italy, including obviously the substitutes. And I just think they've got every single confidence in the manager, and he's asked them to play this way. He's probably had to persuade them to play this way. And once you start to get positive results, and then you also get the belief. And you can just see that they're very much as one as a team as well. And yeah, they really are going to take some beating. And it's just really, really good to watch. Even me at my age now, when Italy are playing in this tournament, it's like sit down early and take it all in, because it's a real education.
I do want to talk to you both about England-Germany before we wrap things up, but are Italy the most impressive team thus far, Mark, or is somebody else more likely to win?
No, for me, for what they've got, yeah, absolutely. We know all about the French and the Belgians and all those kind of teams as well. But no, for me, yes, is the answer to that.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I agree. And Spinazzola is my favourite player of the tournament so far. Wonderful.
You mentioned, no, you're fine. Spinazzola, I mean, the 2 Italian fullbacks bombing on. It's not something we've seen from the English fullbacks thus far. So they play Germany on Tuesday. It's amazing looking, like the press coverage today. We do a Sunday paper review, and you could still be here tomorrow reading all of the English-German preview pieces and the various angles across the paper. I mean, the Daily Mail has a 2-page spread on the penalties, almost as if like this game is inevitably going to be settled by penalties. Don't worry about the 90 minutes and extra time. It's what are we going to do when we get to penalties. There's like a psychosis there of doom, I think, David, in some ways.
Psychosis is exactly the right word for the English attitude to the Germans, and it's tied up with, oh gosh, it's not just football history. It's England's rather than Britain's, England's sense of itself as the great power, and in a sense the history of English football those last 50 years has been the retreat from football empire, and we've been as neurotic about that as we were in politics and geopolitics. So Brexit, I see, you can see patterns of thought about, Britain's place in the world and how we're supposed to be better than everybody else, but we find that we're not. You see it in politics, you see it in football, this neurosis that we always have to be the best team. We're always gonna, if we don't win the World Cup or a European Championship, it's somebody's fault. Whereas in fact, in reality, we're a mid-sized, pretty decent footballing nation that does quite well. Reaches quarterfinals, the occasional semi-final. So the English think about this game as they have all Germany-England games for many decades, kind of through a really distorted lens. Can you think through a lens? Anyway, see it through a lens.
So the interesting thing about England, or the striking thing, Mark, is so look, I'm sure on the Italian version of Off the Ball they're debating over whether Locatelli or Verratti should play, and I'm sure there's a quibble with the Dutch, and I'm sure on Portuguese radio they're talking about whether Fernandes should be in the side or not. Looking at the various English media here, the lack of any sense of England's starting 11 or even the formation or how they should go about their business is just huge spectrum. There's no agreement on the team whatsoever. So, for instance, Rooney here, who had been pushing Grealish to the fore for the whole tournament, now says for the Germans, they should really drop Grealish, start Rashford. And to be fair, I want to put his logic to you and see what you think. His team would be Walker, Stones and Maguire, Luke Shaw. He wants Declan Rice sitting with Phillips, and if he's fit, Henderson as a midfield 3. And then he wants Rashford on one wing, Sterling on the other. His logic is Germany, 3 at the back, they play a high line. They're 2 full-backs, their wing-backs will be pushed on very high. He said when you get the ball eventually off Germany, and Germany have had 62% possession, 75% possession and 58% possession in their 3 games. He said when you get the ball off Germany, Rooney says they want you to give the ball to feet. And that's why he's saying the likes of Foden or Grealish, this one's not for you. So he said, don't give them what they want. As soon as you win the ball back, clip it down the channels, have Rashford on one, have Sterling on the other. That's where you're going to get at this German side. That was his plan. But genuinely, there's a different plan in every paper on every page.
Yeah.
How do you see the hand that Gareth Southgate has to play here against Germany?
Well, I read that. That was in the Sunday Times, wasn't it? The Grealish thing with Rooney. Listen, when Grealish played the other night, he looked outstanding and made the goal, as everybody knows. And the thing about him is he gets the team up the pitch. That's one of the most important things with Grealish. And he would always get you a mass of fouls. He has this ability to attract opponents to tackle him, and he just kind of nicks the ball away for them and gets all these fouls. Look, you could pick so many different English teams. I think so far they've been perfunctory for me, to be honest with you. And I think, the story has come out that Steve Holland and Gareth Southgate have looked at teams throughout the years in other competitions and the way that they played, and that, that they wanted to be really, really cautious. Well, they've done that, and they've got through, and they've got the 7 points. They haven't conceded a goal as yet. But they haven't really played. They've kind of played in one... In 90 minutes, you kind of play in one half of the 90 minutes. We haven't seen, an all-out display of. You watch England say, you know what, they were really, really good. We say they were very, very functional. I think Maguire will start. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's obviously proven his return from injury, etc. I don't see the 3 midfield players playing together, because they're all very much of a oneness for me, and I know Phillips because he played well in the game against Croatia. But let's be fair with Croatia, that that they're an raging side. But Phillips generally isn't one that goes box to box. He actually stops the opposition central midfield players playing more than anything. And I just think it depends on the team that he plays. But I certainly would be playing Grealish, because I just think he's got it. I think he's just, he's got outstanding ability. And the thing with England is that we had this big discussion after the second game about what's wrong with Harry Kane, this, that and the other. Well, to be honest with you, he's hardly had any chances. He hasn't really been kind of furnished, for want of a better description, with any balls in the box where he's got himself a chance, just on the odd occasion. And I think with Harry Kane, because you only have to watch them play with Son at Spurs, somebody up and around him, somebody that will run the other side of Harry Kane so he can maybe drop off, etc. And I think that's the biggest thing with England is now in this competition, they're going to have to be, or start to be, a bigger threat in front of the opposition goal, which they haven't so far.
I think that's the key point, isn't it, David, whether you talk about the lack of creativity with their midfield 2 or Harry Kane's form, whatever the core issue is, the net result is they don't create many chances.
Well, I thought Mark touched on the word one twice there. I thought he was going to go on and say that they play in 1s and 2s and possibly 3s. You've got lots of really talented. I can't remember too many generations of English players where there's such a lot of attacking talent, particularly in creative midfield talent. But they're not used to playing together. It's not a team. There's no settled formation. There's no settled style. At the World Cup 3 years ago, it was much more settled. And you had these, for instance, these very elaborate choreographed corner and set piece routines. They were all sort of doing the same thing. They all knew what they were supposed to be doing. It was more limited in a way, but it was very effective. And at the moment, it just seems like a bit of a mess. First 20 minutes against Croatia, they looked terrific. Potentially, a really strong team. And then it just sort of disintegrated. And the conversation about Grealish or not Grealish, I remember this going back decades. There'd always be one sort of super talented player in the Football League or the Premier League. It'd be, I don't know, Stan Bowles or Tony Curry or people like this in the 70s. And later it'd be Gascoigne or Hoddle, or you say, well, you've got to bring in the creative guy. Modern football is not about single creative guys. It's about teams having kind of well-rehearsed, well-practiced, they know how each other, the teammates know how each other thinks, and they know where to move and where to go. And you don't have that with England. You do have it with Germany, perhaps too much, because to some degree, some of them are a bit old. Thomas Muller is now quite old.
You would think he is. He's only 31.
Is he really?
Yeah, it just feels like he's been around for 20 years.
The 1890s. How can this be? Well, anyway, but I think the point stands that the Germans have a settled team. Said people come in and go out, but you basically know how they're going to play, and they know how they're going to play, and they can extemporize from that. With England, it's a bit of a chaos at the moment, and I think Germany will win.
Do you? Yeah.
I think the penalties conversation is, again, it's part of this backward-looking kind of silliness, really.
Yeah. And the thing about Southgate, Mark, is the stakes here for him. I mean, if he makes a semi-final or final, they don't have to win this thing for him to emerge okay. But if they bomb out here, then suddenly all the sheen of 2018 goes. Suddenly you can now interpret 2018 as, well, you lost to Belgium group stages, you lost to Croatia, you didn't really beat anyone, and now a couple of years on, there's been no progress. So actually that's been a pretty terrible tenure. Suddenly everything he's done can be thrown out if they bomb out here against Germany. Huge stakes for him.
Yeah, although if they do bomb out, I don't think he'll lose his job. I think the way the FA are at the moment with not just the football, with everything surrounding football, etc., I think they very much think that he's the man to lead them forward. I mean, I was obviously working at the World Cup in Russia, and I just kept saying to people, they've not played anybody. They played the dog and duck in one of the games, I remember, in the league basis and everything. And, of course, it's a typically English thing where as soon as they win a big game, in inverted commas, they're going to actually rule the world at football. And as you rightly say, Croatia beat them quite comfortably, I felt. The Belgians beat them easily. And, they come home and they're all heroes. So... And in this group so far, they've just done enough. Now maybe just doing enough is part of a master plan where we might see a completely different England against the Germans. But I don't really see it. I think David's absolutely right. It's just you look at them and they don't look as a team. They've got very, very good players. They've got some technically gifted players as well. I mean, look at the two lads as well that play in Germany, and I think the whole of Germany, who knows anything about football, is saying, why aren't these two lads playing? Because they've been really, really outstanding. But I just think it's this general thing between Holland and Southgate, which is this is the way we are going to get through, and this is the way we are going to win the competition. So I think Tuesday night, really seriously, it's going to be massive. I mean, in terms of the TV over here and the audience, I think one of England's games so far has got 20 million. Well, I would think it'll be nearer 30. Probably half the country will be watching the game on Tuesday, and it will be fascinating. I'm not sure it will be outstanding football, but if they get through, wait till you start to read the papers after that one.
Well, I mean, if they get through, the whole thing opens up. I mean, they're on the right side of the draw, and then we're headed for the Dutch again, maybe in the semi-final. So to your eye then, Mark, it's pretty clear that this isn't, thus far in the group stages, this isn't Holland and Southgate realising that really pragmatism rules the day, and look, we're just going to grind it out in the group stages. We won't get any style points, but ultimately we'll therefore be well positioned for, tight knockout football. Yeah. It's not that in your view. This is a manager, they're scrambling a bit more than kind of quietly happy.
Yeah, and I think he feels that defensively against a really good side, I think they will have problems, and he's trying to instill to the players, purely and simply by Rice and Phillips together, against Croatia, because it was the first game, and because the tournament generally seems to be in England. I know we're playing in other venues, etc., but generally it seems to be in England, and it certainly is for England to be there. And it's like the first game is always built up massively, and there's a massive expectation, and they played well in that first half. Yeah. Probably for about half an hour against Croatia. And if you read all the stuff, you think, well, they're going to go and win it. They're going to walk over absolutely every team. But it's just not like that at all. And I just feel with them that he's not quite sure what his best team is, but he knows that they have to be so kind of tight at the back, organised, etc. And I think it's one of those where he'll just believe that whether it's Sterling, a Foden, a Kane, or a Grealish, somebody will come up with a little bit of piece of magic in a game to actually go on for them to win it.
Yeah, God, for all the talent, it's a fairly reductive plan, isn't it? Let's try nick one. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and it'll be interesting to, if the Germans go in front on Tuesday, it will be very, very interesting to see what England do, and I would think that would tell us more about England than any other of the previous games so far.
And Mark, do you agree with David Winner, the Germans to win?
No, I have a feeling that England are going to beat them this time, and don't really ask me why. It's probably something in my water. I just think England will beat them. I always feel with them they have one outstanding performance in these competitions, and I just feel that might come on Tuesday night.
Okay.
The Germans are quite flaky. I mean, they were brilliant against Portugal. Not so brilliant in the other game. They looked awful the other night when they nearly went out. Hungary very nearly beat them.
Yeah. Do you know what was interesting? Rooney in his column, it kind of jumped out to me. I thought the consensus after the French game was that they weren't great, the Germans. And Rooney here in the Sunday Times said their performance against the Portuguese, sure, they won 4-2, but he said the performances against the Portuguese and the French were among the best I've seen at Euro 2020. So he kind of liked the look of their performance against France.
I think we need a drug test for Wayne.
Yeah, that didn't jump out to me. I mean, they weren't awful against France, but one of the best performances. I hadn't quite seen that.
No, I wouldn't go with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how flaky Germany go against England scrambling. Fellas, really enjoyed that chat. Thanks so much. David Winner, author of various titles, including Brilliant Orange, The Neurotic Genius of Dutch Football. I presume, David, you're tipping the Dutch to go through. Are you at 5?
I think they'll go through sorry, not tomorrow. It's tonight. It's about half an hour.
Half an hour.
I think they'll win that, but I don't think they'll win the tournament.
Okay.
By the way, we haven't mentioned Denmark. They are also on this side of the draw, and they looked pretty good last night.
Well, that's true. That's probably a misstep on my part. Yeah, they're growing into this, to say the least, after a ridiculous beginning, or a surreal beginning. So 4-0, great goals. They'll be feeling good about life. Everybody's second favourite team, all that stuff.
Yeah, they're on the move.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you, David, and Mark Lawrenson, as ever, pleasure. Thanks so much.